coming like a heat wave.
Heat wave.
Heat wave.
Da, 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 da,
Heat
da,
wave.
da, 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 da,
Heat wave.
It's the second day, and Daniel's like, it's a heat wave. It's just been hot for 2 days.
I don't like
It's been warm for 2 days.
because we went from such nice weather for the last like 3 months.
Yeah.
That when it's, like I have walked around the street in pants. And that's all I have to say. I've like walked down the street in the valley without the shadows of the valley of San Fernando in pants in like 110 degree weather. And I'm like, well, this is fine. I can live with this. This is when you're born of one of the children of Arrakis, like I am, I'm still reading Dune. It's really hard to finish, but I've dealt with that. But for some reason, this 90 degree weather after like 65 degrees every single day, I can't handle it.
It feels like we woke up in a different world. Because I was, did you say it was 60 days? Like 60 days of just like marine layer.
Great,
all day.
Love it.
I miss the sun though. Like
why?
This is summertime.
You don't even miss your son.
Whatever his name is, handsome boy. It's hot now. And I don't know.
That's what scares me is that if every single year I go through the same thing of like, I don't think I can handle summer anymore.
I'm too old. My bones are so cold.
I'm so cold-hearted this year. I can't handle a thawing.
No, yeah. Every thawing. This is the second day where it's been kind of warm and I'm liking it, but also I'm looking to the next 5 months and being like, I don't think I have it in me.
No, I can't do it.
No.
Why can't we just...
Why can't the government control the weather, finally?
Somebody said it. Why can't we do like what they did in Saudi Arabia or whatever and try to get clouds to be more productive and then we all die in a flood? Why can't we do that? What's so bad? What's so bad about what Saudi Arabia does?
Yeah. What's so bad about a big biblical flood?
A biblical
flood,
as they call it. Well, this is when you're talking about the weather, you know that it's a podcast about Los Angeles because this is L.A. Meekly.
It's either weather or traffic,
like a heat wave,
like a gridlock,
like 2 days of heat, unseasonably warm heat wave.
It's June. It's supposed to be this hot.
Is it though?
Yeah.
I guess.
There's June gloom, but then like that fades away. And then it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Beach Boys were mostly writing about June.
I thought June gloom was just a condition.
I thought June gloom was just like a drag queen. Like a really sad drag queen. Yeah, really sad drag queen.
Speaking of really sad drag queens, here I am. I'm Daniel Zaffron. Wait, I'm Daniel... I don't know what my drag queen, my sad drag. Daniel Sad Drag Zaffron.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. I didn't have one planned either. Dracula's daughter. How about that?
Dracula's daughter.
Dracula. Yeah.
You come into my apartment without a pre-prepared drag queen name for yourself. Where do you think you enter my domain, my dojo?
My dojo.
And you don't have some sort of slam on yourself? Well, this is we're a show where we talk about Los Angeles history, and this one kind of more recent history as part of this episode. So before we get into July, where the weather is frightful, let's talk about June, where half the weather was frightful. What did you do in the month of June?
Well, I hid from the sun for most of it. Did I?
This is nice. You ever heard of the Bronson Cave? I've been living on a cot in the Bronson Cave.
Yeah, a bunch of bats in there.
Adam.
Yeah.
Christian. Ben. Yeah, Ben. Michael.
Val. This month, I've done this before, but now I had to go on my own business. Went to the Stanley Mosque Courthouse on Hill Street and because I had to go to jury selection.
Oh, you got it. Because you paid off that lady to not say that you did things during your election.
I needed to remind her what an NDA meant. Don't tell anyone. Here's money.
That's that group out of Compton, isn't it? NDA?
I went to jury selection because I ran out of deferments or whatever.
You only had so many. Yeah, I got to go to Vietnam.
Yeah. I need to go. I'm fleeing a situation. Yeah, no, so I went. And the courthouse is beautiful.
Is this federal or whatever the other one is?
It's state. Yeah, it's state.
Because I got called for federal jury duty once and I had to go downtown, but it must have been that place.
It must have been that place. Maybe I'm thinking of federal. I actually don't. I don't know. I have no idea.
12 clueless men.
Yeah. Where are we? Which one's the bathroom?
Wait, what does acquit mean? I quit?
I quit?
Quit
He's quitting crime?
He's quitting freedom, so he's guilty? He's acquitted. Yeah, okay. Yeah, he's acquitted.
He's acquitted. Yeah, I've never done jury duty before. And I honestly do one of those people that would like to serve. I think it's your civil responsibility to do that. I just think... Here we go with civil responsibility.
Wait, Greg didn't come in with a drag queen name, but he did have a Let's Go Brandon sign flag that he came wrapped in.
You go to one Trump rally and all of a suddenly they mail this to your house. Those stickers that you put at the gas pump, like I'm supposed to look this up? What? I don't care.
No, those are Ellie Meekley stickers.
Yeah, no, I went for jury selection. I had to put my hardship in because I have no days off from where I work to attend a 25-day jury.
They don't, well, you get paid for jury duty, but it's like $4 an hour.
It's like $15 a day, which is, this was graded 19-1.
1901, not even 1901.
Yeah, 1901.
This was good 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, but like just being part of the whole process and seeing the first inch of the mile that is a court case was very interesting to me. And the courthouse is gorgeous, and I just love being in downtown.
That's weird.
Walking the streets.
That's a weird take.
Yeah, it's a weird take. I understand that, but I really do love downtown.
Yeah, there is something about downtown. I haven't spent much time there lately, but there is something about being downtown.
Yeah.
That is at once thrilling and disgusting.
Truly disgusting and scary. I've gone on a lot of walks lately, and walking around Echo Park. I always thought that Echo Park was designed by someone who's trying to escape from cops. Right. Because there's so many
this is your big conspiracy theory about Los Angeles.
Alleyways that swiggle and hidden staircases and hills and secret pathways. Like it's very much designed to get away from cops and run from somewhere. And I sort of feel the same way about downtown because I walked from the courthouse. I parked for free because I was on a jury. I had to go to the library, so I picked a street. And then, the floor I needed to go to was closed. So I had to walk back to my car. And I was just taking like side streets and stairs and weird areas. And I just love like the movability, the adaptability of downtown is very interesting to me. I love it. I love downtown.
Well, why don't you, I don't know, marry it?
Marry it, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe if you take a picture, you can like make out with the picture.
Yeah, kiss it on the lips or something.
Yeah, I mean, get a room like at the Bonaventure and shove like a duffel bag that folds in on itself, shove downtown into a hotel room downtown and like, I don't know, mac with it.
Yeah, kiss it on the open butt.
Which is kind of what downtown is. Well, you want to hear what I did?
Yes.
Would it surprise you to know that I ate some food this month?
It would not surprise me in the least that the most celebratory moment of the month was you eating food.
Rejoice.
Rejoice, everyone.
I've kind of slammed the farmer's market in the past.
The 3rd and Fairfax.
Meet me at 3rd and Fairfax, as everybody says, yes. Of course.
You're a big dummy for that. I bet your complaint is prices.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my thing of the month is how expensive things are. No, a lot of the food is just okay, but the prices are kind of outrageous at the farmer's market. But we finally went to, I don't know if it's called Maggie's or McGee's. Mm-hmm. It's the like corned beef place that's there.
Oh, right. Yeah, you were talking about that.
I couldn't stop talking about it.
Yeah, you went on for several days.
And to be picked up tomorrow, chapter 2, we've gone awry. They've been at the farmer's market in one form or another for over 100 years. So we were like, we got to, because we went there and we thought like, there's all these places we haven't tried. Yeah. And even though they are really expensive and aren't all that great, like we got to try them because they're here. And like a lot of these places are iconic. Mm-hmm. So we tried the McGee's or whatever.
Yeah.
Corned beef. Really good.
Really?
Like it felt like it's very fatty corned beef. So it was almost like a Wagyu of corned beef.
Okay.
So it was, if you like that sort of fatty, almost like buttery tasting corned beef, it was very good.
That sounds very, you're selling it right now.
I'm salivating, Greg. And I just ate a stick of butter before we recorded so I get those dulcet tones. But it was outrageously expensive for what we got.
Yeah.
But the sandwich is very good. And it's almost like an overlooked old LA restaurant because this has been around as long or longer than Musso and Frank's or something like that. But it's just a stand. So nobody's like, you got to sit.
You got to hit that stand.
Yeah, you got to go to to the stand. Have you gone to the stand?
Have you gone to the stand? Last time I got was probably with you.
I know,
20 years ago. Yeah. A whole 20 years ago. Yeah, no, I love the farmer's market. It is very expensive. I'll say that. But like the options are really good. And honestly, like I haven't had that many things where I'm like, that's disgusting. Like it's all like I've enjoyed everything. But like I say, like I'm a dog eating off a plate. Like it's food. So like I have.
Well, you go to the dog bakery that's there, and man, these muffins are great.
There's not a single thing wrong with these muffins, and this is so dog friendly in this place.
These pork sausage muffins are so good.
They even have eye wipes.
Yeah, and they've got these little bags for when you go to the bathroom. Yeah, nothing I've had there has been like, oh, this is gross. It's just a lot of stuff, flavor-wise, compared to price-wise, has never quite matched up.
Right.
But it's still a fun place. Yeah. Like, I will never not recommend someone should go to the farmer's market.
Right.
I will say that.
No, absolutely. I always tell tourists to go there because there's so many options, and you're at a historic place in the
Grove.
The Grove, yeah. The old Italian village, yeah.
No, the other one's an old Italian village. The Grove. Well, what is the Grove? The Americana is an old Italian village.
Yeah, it's been gentrified.
But the Paris Tower is there.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
the Paris
Tower.
Eiffel.
Yeah.
But then what is the Grove supposed to be?
I don't know.
I guess maybe it's like a newer Italian village.
Yeah. It's been gentrified longer.
Yeah.
It's on third way gentrification.
It's like the Vatican.
Yeah.
It's Vatican City.
Vatican City, yeah. I passed Dupars the other day, and I was like, oh, I kind of miss Dupars. Dupars is kind of the business.
I miss Dupars too, because there used to be one right by here.
Yeah.
But the last time I went to a Dupars, the food was so bad.
Oh, yeah?
But I will still, again, just like the farmer's market, I will always recommend, go to Dupars, get the bad food. It's
Live
great.
it up. Don't let anyone stop you. This is America.
Make your own kind of music at Dupars. And this episode brought to you by Dupars. Now that we are done both carrot and sticking the farmer's market, let's talk about July. What are we, Greg?
What are we doing Why are we even doing this?
In a heat wave. Do you even have your still suit on?
Is that the suit from Dune?
Yeah,
kind of.
Well, which suit? Which one are you talking about? Are you talking about the thing that keeps up Baron Harkonnen? his suspensors, as they call them in the book.
They call it that?
They call it that.
There should be a cooler name for that.
There should be a cooler name for a lot of things in Dune, like Paul and Jessica. But in the book, he isn't floating. It's just like an old man wearing suspenders that keep up his fat, but like they're spacey.
Okay.
But he isn't floating himself.
Right.
That's
a shame. I kind of like him floating.
That is a shame. I like when he's floating. I like when he's black and white.
I like when he's black and white. I like it. Looks like he drank the fizzy lifting drink at Willy Wonka's factory.
A little too much fizzy lifting drink.
You got in trouble. You're supposed to stop doing it now.
You lose, grandfather. Spoiler. But so what are we talking about in July? This was a Greg original episode.
This was a Greg original episode that wanted to turn into a year-long series.
Yeah. Greg got
nipped in the bud.
Well, I'm very pro-cop.
You're very pro-cop. We're going to be talking about the LASD, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, which I've been reading a little bit more about, trying to get the history of. And, there really isn't a lot of books out. There's like one or two books on the Sheriff's Department. There's some podcasts out there, too, that I've been listening to. But I just want to get a feel for how the department works.
I just want to get a feel for like what the hiring process is.
Yeah. Are they looking for code enforcement?
What's like the pay?
Yeah.
How much evidence do I have to cover up to get like a bonus?
Yeah.
But I ran into the same thing, that there's not that much. You would think there would be.
Yeah.
But
LAPD has so much.
The problem, as with some of the things I was even reading pointed out with the Sheriff's Department, is that, it's like the history is written by the victors.
Right.
So, like Victor Fleming, Victor Hugo. Yeah. But you can't really take the Sheriff's Department version of history, but you also, that's like kind of all there is. Like it's also, we've run into this a lot of times in other episodes. I remember also of like, I can't really 100% take what the police and sheriff's departments say the version of history was. I can't 100% take, like, I think we might have talked about this with gangs of like, what the gangs version of the history is. The truth is somewhere in the middle.
Right.
It doesn't make anybody look particularly good.
Yeah.
Like we were saying before, like, I don't just want to bash the sheriff's department, even though they deserve a lot of bashing.
Yeah.
But like, the history is not always flattering for law enforcement.
Yeah, no, it isn't. And I get like it's a hard job, and it's a job that not a lot of people are aching to do.
Yeah.
And also the sheriff's department is so wide, like it's county-wide.
Wait, so I learned some things about how the sheriff's department currently functions that were mind-blowing.
So like, it must be hard to like, it's like trying to cover the history of the state or something. Like it's just so vast.
But then again, there's not that many facts about what they did.
Because it's so vast. So like, who's writing down like, okay, this was happening. There's no like succinct timeline that covers.
I've got a timeline.
Oh boy, my thing is mostly timeline. Okay, let's start then.
Let us begin our great pro sheriffs. I also, when you parked today, I slapped a Blue Lives Matter sticker on the back of your car because you suggested this episode. Boy, oh boy.
It's a Smurfs related sticker.
You know,
my favorite M&M.
Let's go, Papa. My favorite M&M. Blue M&Ms matter. So I am going to be, just to put, what we're going to be covering, I'm going to be covering just a general overview of the history of the sheriff's department, mostly the very early stuff. And then you are going to be focusing on one very corrupt recent individual. Initially, you wanted to cover because there was a thing of these are the 4 worst sheriffs in LA history.
There's an LA history page through the library called LA Almanac, and it's very good resources to get started on research.
Through the library?
Well, I found that link through the library, so it's a resource that they offer, but I don't think it's library run. But they have a page of here are the worst sheriffs in history, and I bet there are more.
Oh, yeah, because we both looked at that list.
Yeah.
We both huddled around and we're like, look at these guys. But as I was reading about just all the sheriffs, I'm like, well, what about these ones?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I picked somebody more recent just because he was on my mind.
Yeah, because you love him so much.
I'm just trying to figure out my fan letter to him.
How do we get him re-elected? How do we challenge the results of the last election?
Which we'll get into that.
Well, I'm going to start with my general history of the sheriff's department. So I almost considered writing in this one on a music measure of okay, this is the rhythm I need.
Oh my God.
I think you know where this is going.
I absolutely know. There's only one song with the sheriff and deputy in it.
I researched the sheriff and a few of the deputies.
Yeah, I'm glad you.
Okay, let me take this Rasta wig off now. It was really offensive for a while. I've been wearing it the whole time we've been talking.
Yeah, I didn't even question it.
Oh, this is his summer do.
I've been safaring since before you were born. That's the Simpsons line. I can't claim ownership of that perfect line. Oh, look at your baby right now.
Yeah, he's ready to destroy the recording.
Yeah, flip over and knock your microphone and headphones off.
We're talking about Phantom the K. He's going to roll off the table, pull all of the microphone cables out, and somehow rip my ears off because of the headphones.
Yeah, it's going to pull a piece of your eardrum up, and your pants are going to fall. Because there's suspenders.
And I have he's going to make my suspensors malfunction. I'm going to drop down from the ceiling from eating all that McGee's corned beef. And I'm glad we're doing this because this is one of those almost pillars of LA history sort of things that we haven't really done in a while. So it's time to go back to the lawless days of LA when racism was even more blatant. Fade in on a sleepy Pueblo town. We haven't been able to say that in a while.
No, it's been a minute.
And then smash cut to a dusty pre-United States town, because that's where I'm going to start this story. And that kind of nether times between the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo when Mexico gave up California, but before California officially became a U.S. state.
Right.
So that's kind of where we are.
Okay.
Post-Spain, post-Mexico, but still kind of Mexican, about to be white as hell.
Right.
There was crime. Lots of it. It really was a version of the Wild West during this time in LA. And with the government being up in the air, so were laws and rules.
Yeah.
So to deal with those who broke the rules, be them official or just what people wanted the rules to be, there were 3 options you had for criminals. The first were the courts and judges that may have been around. Not many. The second was vigilantism. Speaking of the Bronson Caves, that meant a person or a posse would hunt down who they felt was a criminal, and then that person was given no trial, but plenty of punishment for their crimes.
Oh, we forgot the trial part.
Oh, wait. Hey, put his neck back together.
Well, we were going to put you on trial, but we don't have one of those stupid wigs, those colonial wigs, so we're just going to throw you in a pool.
We're going to throw you in a pool and see if you're a witch. But then the third option were known as vigilance committees that were usually made up of rich business owners and the elite in town that would hold unofficial trials of sorts with unofficial juries of sorts. Was that what you got called downtown for?
Yeah.
The vigilance committee?
Yeah, Harry Chandler called me downtown to see if we should beat up a guy who stole an apple from a cart.
He was trying to start a union, so Harry Chandler wants me to blow up his house. So they would have these unofficial things who would determine who was and wasn't guilty and what the punishment should be. So this of course was not ideal, because the real goal of these committees was to make sure that the rich men who headed the committee's businesses were safe from what they deemed to be lawlessness. That's really what it was, of these people going around in this part of town are bad for my printing business. Right. So let's, I don't know, kill them?
Chop their legs off? I don't know. That's scary that a commercial business can decide whether you get your legs broken or not.
So naive, Greg. Wake up, okay?
Wake up.
Wake up
Who
to
else
America. Did you know did that judge when he went to jury duty look familiar? Yeah, that was Elon Musk. Were you wondering why he was wearing suspensors?
That's a guy who owns Mickey's Haberdashery.
Yeah, that was Walt Disney's heir.
You're going to badmouth Walt Disney's heir?
And did you wonder why you were being asked, do you have any objection to the cult of Goofy? So these vigilance committees were seen as legitimate and also democratic, even when their verdicts went against what an actual judge in an actual court might have decided. Like, people still felt like, well, I side with the vigilance committee. Yeah. I think we should go with what these business owners say. So really, these were just vigilantes with gavels is what the vigilance committees were. Now, with this transition between Mexican to American and the transition from Spanish to Mexican being not that far in the past, there was a lot of racial tension in LA,
was there?
Yeah. I'm sorry to say.
Oh, no. I didn't suspect it from the 19th century or the 20th century.
What racist event happened in the 19th century? Name one.
Name one.
Name one that lasted for like 4 years. So there was white, Anglo, Mexican, Black, Native, and Asian people were all here. And one group was about to assert dominance. And I can tell you that they weren't Asian. So with the emerging American government, they wanted what they were used to in all forms of government throughout the U.S. And that included a law enforcer who would not just bring order, but would bring white American order.
Right.
Like that's
that specific brand of justice.
That flavor, vanilla.
Mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise flavor. My favorite flavor of ice cream is mashed potatoes that they use for a photo shoot about ice cream. So enter the sheriff's department. On April Fool's Day, 1850, the Sheriff's Department of Los Angeles County was officially formed, with the first sheriff being a man named George T. Burrell. Born in Rhode Island in 1810, he was a very dapper and well-polished man that impressed people with his clothing and a giant handlebar mustache.
Oh, yeah, I assumed.
You know, he looked like Wyatt Earp. Like, this is what sheriffs looked like back then. He lived in Mexico for a while, but during the Mexican-American War, people in Mexico were starting to turn against American expats, so he moved to Los Angeles and stumbled his way into being LA's first sheriff. And I do mean stumble.
I'm fleeing Mexico for Mexico Light.
Which
is California.
I know. I want the trial version of Mexico. I can't afford the monthly payments. Now, something to remember at this time is that in 1850, LA County was 8 times the size it is today. Because LA County used to also include the counties of San Bernardino, Riverside, Orange, and Kern.
Wow.
Like
the county of Southern California.
Pretty much everything except San Diego was Los Angeles back then. So this was the territory Sheriff Burrell was in charge of. And for this, he had to assemble an elite team of a whopping 2 deputies.
Oh, my God.
So the sheriff and 2 deputies were patrolling all of Southern California.
Okay, there's a crime happening in Kern County right now. And there's another one.
In 4 days, we can address that. If our horses hold up... Yeah, it's kind of outrageous. Like this is one time in my life where I'm like, you kind of need more cops. Yeah. Like you can't
give them the budget, all of it.
You can't expect 3 people to cover crimes over a 8,000 square foot or whatever, however big it is. I don't even know. It's unfathomably.
Yeah, there's something happening in Channel Islands, and it needs all 3 of us. But only I can go.
I can't swim.
I might die, so I don't know. Tell my wife, I guess.
If I die, hire somebody else. So the first ever of these deputies was a Canadian named Elijah T. Moulton, who was sometimes referred to as the undersheriff. Ooh. Moulton Avenue, right by the San Antonio Winery, is named after this guy.
Oh, really?
Not only was Burrell's duty to enforce the law throughout, like we were saying, basically all of Southern California that wasn't San Diego, he was also responsible for being the court translator, because the first criminal court judge in LA was a guy named Augustine Olvera who didn't speak English.
Okay.
So Burrell lived in Mexico for a while. He could translate. He also was a judge himself, a la Andy Taylor, for the last 3 months of his tenure. And he was also in charge of collecting everybody in LA's taxes. Granted, there was like 7 people, but still, you have to go and collect everybody's
7, One of those people is in San Bernardino. One of those people is in Riverside. One of those people was in Carpinteria.
Sorry, I know you're being murdered, but I have to take a wagon to Santa Barbara because someone owes me 4 cents.
And they're going to argue about it.
Hey, the only thing that's certain is death and taxes. So I'm certain you're going to die and I'm going to get these taxes. So he was also, he was the town's executioner.
Nope.
So if someone was sentenced
Wasn't
to death...
everybody?
Okay, well, a lot of people fancied themselves a town executioner. If someone was sentenced to death, the sheriff was the one to take the life out of that person.
Wow.
And these were public events that were very well attended.
Ticketed events?
Families would come with picnics to watch the executions. They would even sell souvenirs and postcards from them, which is yet another reason to sign up for our Patreon. We've got a lot of public execution postcards that aren't moving well.
Yeah. Innocent question mark?
You decide. And all of this he did while carrying around an infantry sword. Because it was 1850.
Yeah.
So
he kept loading bullets into his sword. It's not working.
They keep sliding off. But don't worry. He was well compensated for his efforts. He was making $10,000 a year, which was more than the president of the United States was making. And in today's dollars, that's just over $400,000 a year. So
where's the money coming from?
I don't know. Like even then, it's like the city has $500,000. Let's give $400,000 of it to the sheriff. So he was also in charge of running the jail, which was an old wooden military guardhouse west of Maine and south of Arcadia, kind of where the courthouse is today. It was right over there. Is that where you went?
Yeah, that's where I went.
To the old...
Burrow was there too.
What? They can't pry the infantry sword out of his skeletal hand. If you can, you become sheriff.
Oh, no, it's me.
Let the boy try. So this miserable place, the guardhouse, had a curtain made of rawhide for a door. Rawhide's our door. And no cells. There were no cells in it. So prisoners...
Promise you won't break out.
Well, the prisoners were all chained up by the ankle to a giant log that was inside the middle of the room. So this was the first jail jail in American Los Angeles.
Okay.
That is, unless you were native, then you were chained up outside. Of course. 50 cents a day from the budget was allocated per prisoner for food each day. So you got 50 cents worth of food. That is, unless you were native, then you got 25 cents worth of food. And since we're on the subject of how much worse it was to be native during this time, on Saturday evening, like this is what I'm talking about. I'm like, I don't just want to paint like the entire history of the sheriff's department as like this evil thing.
Here's 5 facts.
Here's the facts. You decide. So on Saturday evenings, the marshals, which is another group that I'll talk about soon, would go around arresting native men on Saturday evenings on the grounds of drunkenness or vagrancy, take them to jail, and then on Monday mornings, they would be brought out onto the street and auctioned off for leased labor for 50 cents a day. So kind of slavery.
Yeah.
They would.
I don't know if that's kind of.
I know. I don't know if these men were being paid 50 cents, like if the native men were being, or if the sheriff or the marshal was
Why would they get money?
Great question.
Why would they give them money? That doesn't sound very
good
old white dude.
No. Not the old white dudes I'm familiar with. So luckily this prison was accidentally burned down by the military, but a second one was rebuilt made of adobe. This one had cells, but it was adobe, so people could punch their way through the walls and escape. Plus, the guards were very easily bribed, so the first ever prisoner to escape from jail in LA happened in 1851, courtesy of a Matias Cortázar. He broke out of the first prison break.
Squeezed through the bars.
Like the T-1000.
Yeah.
But he just punched through a wall like the regular T. A huge problem in LA at this time was murder. Between September 1850 to September 1851, out of the roughly 2,500 people living in LA, 31 of them were murdered, which is almost 1.25% of the population died by murder.
Crazy.
To extrapolate that to the per 100,000 that's used to measure homicide in cities today, that would be about 1,240 per 100,000, which from what I read made this the highest homicide rate in U.S. history. Was in Los Angeles in 1850.
I remember reading that fact somewhere, but having us land there through that, it's scary.
It's outrageous. Yeah. And this doesn't even take into account the people who were killed out in the wilderness that nobody ever knew about, or the killings of anybody who was Black, Native, Asian, or Mexican, because those were not considered crimes. So that wasn't even counted. So I'm sure, the number...
much worse.
Knowing old white guys like I know, it must have been much worse. And just because there was now a sheriff, that didn't mean the vigilante groups just suddenly stopped either. These groups and individuals were still lynching people left and right.
God.
They would sometimes even storm the jail to drag out a prisoner and hang them.
Wow.
Sometimes the sheriff had to have a military guard escort him and the prisoner from the jail to the courthouse so the mobs wouldn't kill the prisoner before he even got to trial.
My God.
Between 1851 to 74, there were 40 legal hangings, 38 vigilante lynchings, and 32 Vigilance Committee sanctioned executions. So the sheriffs had to compete not just against criminals, but also those who wanted to take justice into their own hands and be criminals themselves.
Oh my God.
It didn't help that in the grand scheme of things, the sheriff had a pretty low status on the totem pole in LA at the time. Authority-wise, they were a step below the vigilance committees. And those weren't even official things. Like the sheriff just was not seen as legitimate as Harry Chandler, or who the earlier Harry Chandler,
right,
saying these guys should die because they're Mexican.
I don't like that.
No, it's capitalism at work.
No,
right?
It's perfect.
It's
perfect.
Tell that to Judge Musk. So to help not only assert their authority, but also to help cover such a huge area of jurisdiction, two things were formed to help the sheriff's department out. The first were the township constables, which were basically locally elected sheriffs in these small townships that were popping up around LA County to deal with the petty crimes in the area that the sheriff would never have time to get to.
Okay, that makes sense.
So they were kind of like intern sheriffs for
right.
you're going to handle Pomona because I'm busy in Kern County.
Yeah.
But they still all reported to the sheriff, these constables.
Okay.
But this was a pretty flawed setup because they would get paid $1 per arrest they made, which is bad to incentivize that. But then they had a cap of about $83 a month that they could make total. So after they hit that, they just stopped doing anything, which is also bad.
So you just have to be the 84th criminal.
Congratulations. You're the 84th
you get a free
criminal.
crime.
The next one's on us. Then in 1853, the city council formed a group called the Los Angeles Rangers.
I'm scared. I don't know why that scares me so much.
Anything with Rangers in the title is a little bit scary. The Sheriff's Rangers were a band of 100 volunteers who would be ready at a moment's notice to help hunt criminals. This is what the Rangers were. They were basically a private militia that took orders from the mayor and the sheriff. So the first captain of these guys was a man named Alexander Hope. So if there was a particularly hard to catch criminal on the loose or a particularly large gang terrorizing the county, the sheriff would summon some of the constables or the rangers or both to help him, since he himself only had 2 deputies to help him out. The sheriff also had the power and often would deputize people on the spot to help him, you know?
You.
He'd just pin a badge on them and off they went. Badges back then, which they didn't.
They did actually need.
And they didn't smell that bad, but they did need them. They were the only way you could tell someone was a deputy or the sheriff because they didn't have uniforms. They would just dress like everybody else.
Wow.
But if they had a badge, you knew that this guy's scary. Or not scary.
Or not scary, depending on the situation.
The sheriff got to wear a gold one. The deputies were all silver, and everybody had to go to a jeweler and pay themselves to have one made for them.
Wow.
For the first 32 years of there being a sheriff in LA, they had elections every single year for a new one until 1882 when they switched to every 2 years and then every 4 years starting in 1894, which is what they still do today.
Yeah.
The second sheriff LA ever had was a guy named James Barton, who was from Missouri but lived in Mexico for 2 years before moving to LA in 1843 and was described as not being just reckless but also violent towards the women in his life.
Oh, wow.
So obviously he was elected sheriff. How do you treat women? Oh, here's a badge. Under him, a sturdier jail was built in 1853 that was made of brick, which wolves couldn't blow down. And it was 2 stories. The first was for city prisoners. The second story was for county prisoners.
Who's getting it better, honestly?
I know.
He goes up.
I know.
So city.
But the lynching mobs can reach the first floor easier.
Stairs are greatest enemy.
Yeah, they're like zombies. They can't, as long as you're upstairs, they can't get you. So he ended up serving on and off for several years, but there were 2 notable incidents from his time as sheriff. The first was in 1854 when a David Brown was convicted of murder by the California Supreme Court, but the California Supreme Court stayed his execution. But this was not what the mobs of Los Angeles wanted. So the mayor of the city himself resigned from his position so he could lead a mob that broke down the door of the new prison, overpowered Sheriff Barton, dragged Brown outside, and hanged him. The mayor, I guess former mayor.
For the
if
hour.
You're
going to be fair, yeah. And then ran for re-election and won.
Yes.
You're kidding.
Yes, he did. He got reelected. This is what the people wanted.
This was his vacation?
I'm taking a sabbatical.
Yeah, that is wild.
So this guy's partner in the murder, the one who was killed, his partner was Philippe Alvitre, who had also been granted a stay of execution, but the letter got lost in the mail. So Barton had already personally executed this guy. A week later, his letter showed up saying, don't kill him. But hey, the mob would have gotten him anyway.
This is why post office is so important. You have to let them do their job.
The real criminals here?
Is
the Pony Express. So the other incident with Sheriff Barton is probably what he could best be remembered by. In January of 1857, a gang of bandits known as the Manilas Gang was terrorizing San Juan Capistrano, which was not just the jurisdiction of the Swallows at the time, but also the LA sheriff. So Barton gathered some of the Rangers with him to form a posse of his own and rode down to San Juan Capistrano to get these guys.
Okay.
A shootout ensued where about 2 of the Manilas gang were killed, but several of the Rangers and Burton himself were killed in the shootout, making Burton the first LA sheriff to die in the line of duty.
Wow.
A few days later, the LA Board of Supervisors authorized $3,000 to pay any vigilantes willing to go down to San Juan Capistrano and catch these guys. So a new posse was sent down there who captured 52 of the members of this gang, 11 of whom made it back to LA alive to be hanged at Fort Hale just north of Los Angeles on Aliso Street.
Jeez.
This whole debacle marked the disbanding of the Rangers in favor of more trained law enforcers.
Yeah, maybe you should consider that.
Maybe not just like the greengrocer picks up a shotgun and goes down to San Juan Capistrano. So each sheriff barely had any regular deputies working under him around this time. Even in 1880, there were only 12 deputies.
Wow.
And at the time, all the people appointed as deputies were either friends of the sheriff or people getting the job as political favors. So for that reason, every time a new sheriff came in, all the old deputies would be fired and a new batch would be brought in. For that reason, it wasn't really a job people trained for because you'd probably just be there a year and then you'd have to find another career. So it was like, I just graduated college. I'm going to take a gap year and be a deputy sheriff of Los Angeles.
Just to keep myself busy.
Just the life experience and the experience of taking life. So the rest of the 1800s was really just chaos being managed by people not really qualified for the job. On January 1st, 1858, former Ranger William C. Getman took over as sheriff. 7 days later, a man barricaded himself inside the Monte Pico pawn shop, again, near Los Angeles and Aliso. Everything around this time was near Los Angeles.
There was 2 streets.
Los Angeles and Aliso. So when Getman and his deputies showed up to this guy barricaded in the pawn shop, the man inside charged out shooting, killed Sheriff Getman before being killed himself.
Wow.
So this was 2 things. This made Getman the second and the last sheriff to ever die in the line of duty in Los Angeles County. And this was also one of the earliest known instances of suicide by cop. So this was a momentous occasion.
Historic.
For Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Some other highlights from the late 1800s. In 1859, Tomas Sanchez.
It's Sanchez. There's nothing wrong with the way you said it.
Oh, hey, let's do 2 takes. One for the people who speak Spanish, one for the people. Sanchez. We'll see which one tests better. So this guy became the first Mexican-American sheriff of LA County. He was born in LA while it was still Mexico, so he was Mexican-American. In 1863, 300 men tried to break into the jail with pickaxes and sledgehammers to kill all the prisoners inside, and Sanchez had to protect them, oddly enough, with the help of backup sent by a vigilance committee. So sometimes they were good.
Yeah.
Weirdly, this guy went on to join a pro-Confederate militia during the Civil War.
Oh, I read about this.
Yeah. He was, I think he was one of the ones who were like, this is one of the worst guys. Of course, on October 24th, 1871, I'm kind of moving through history now. October 24th, 1871, the Chinatown Massacre happened, which we talked about a long time ago, where Sheriff James F. Burns claims to have brought order to the mob, but even if he did, too little, too late. But in true sheriff's fashion, they were given a ton of money for a job badly done to make sure this never happens again after the Chinatown Massacre.
Yeah. Will money fix the past?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's see. 100 years later, more money.
More money. Maybe it wasn't enough money.
William Rowland became LA's youngest sheriff at age 25 in 1872, serving until 1875. And then again from 1880 to 82, he was the one in charge of catching Greg's dream man, Tiburcio Vasquez.
Oh, hard eyes.
Hard eyes, hard face, hard heart. An Australian named John Klein was sheriff from 1893 to 94. And then again, way later in 1915 to 21, he was the one removed from office for incompetence, overspending, and stealing county revenue.
Stealing county revenue and also selling badges, deputy badges to people when he was trying to get reelected. And also just like regularly selling badges.
Well, they were just giving those things away anyway.
I mean, really, like, it wasn't a large gap from what was actually happening.
In 1899 was LA's first black deputy, J.B. Loving, who had been a former Buffalo soldier.
Okay.
But before we get saying, oh, cool, he's how progressive, he was known for spying on prisoners in the jail and using the information he overheard to entrap them. He's also credited with being the guy responsible for the concept of overcrowding jail cells when there were too many prisoners. This was his idea of like, what if we just cram too many people
They have already committed a crime. Why do we care if they have no personal space?
They're barely people. So to top it off, when he retired, he moved to the suburbs and listed himself as white. So that's the first black deputy.
Cool.
Then there was just the everyday stuff of arresting traveling hobos and tramps along the outskirts of town in what they called tramp jungles, which is a new show on Bravo. Around the winter months, they would do this to make residents of LA feel safe. So this is 100 years ago. This
what do you mean you don't feel safe? We arrested 20 hobos by the river. What do you mean you don't feel safe?
Those guys making beans on a trash can, they're gone.
Don't worry about them. No one's going to eat the beans in the trash can now.
Those beans, they're yours. And
no one's going to steal a pie from the windowsill as long as I'm around.
Now I'm just going to give a rundown of some of the milestones throughout the 1900s. They got their first car in 1907. But it was their grandpa's car. So that same year, the venerable Sheriff Billy Hamill said to his deputies, "Be courteous. If you are insulted by a bully in the office, don't lick him there. It's bad for the reputation of the office. There are plenty of dark alleys." The sheriff said this to his deputies. In 1912, they hired the first female deputy in the entire United States, Margaret Queen Adams, who ended up serving for 35 years, mostly doing clerical work, but she would usually be sent out to calls that involved women and children. 1913 was when deputy positions became civil service positions. So that was when they stopped being, I'm going to hire my friends, and they became fixed, stable jobs with set salaries.
It's small movements like that really legitimize Los Angeles.
Yeah. And all it took was 70 years of the position. 1915, they started using fingerprinting. 1920, there were up to 82 deputies. In 1921, they formed a homicide department and also stopped using chain gangs.
Cool.
In 1921. In 1922, they formed departments for robbery, narcotics, auto theft, and liquor-related crimes. 1923, California passed a law that all cities with over 40,000 residents had to have a municipal court, and along with that was required a marshal, like I talked about before, to enforce the doings of the court. So now not only was there the sheriff's department and the LAPD at this point, there is still, I believe, some constables and now a fourth law enforcement agency of marshals.
So if a crime is happening, 4 people can come and argue about who's supposed to take care of it.
4 people won't show up to help you. So 1924 saw the creation of the first 2 substations of the sheriff's department. The first one being the Florence station on the 1600 block of Florence in South LA, and then the East Los Angeles station, which I believe is still the same building that's at 5019 East 3rd Street. That's where they started.
By the duck pond?
Yes, actually, they are. The ducks are former criminals.
No, they're reformed. They used to be geese.
They went through a 12 quack program. So in 1926, the Hall of Justice jail was built and run by the sheriffs. That year also, they opened the Vermont, Norwalk, Temple City, and Newhall stations. On September 27th that year, they also formed the Sheriff's Aero Squadron, which were 5 deputies who patrolled the skies, known as the Deputy Air Sheriffs.
Oh, cool.
Their headquarters were at the Aero Corporation Airport. Their main duties were policing planes and the airports, but also searching for criminals that fled into the countryside or the hills. They also did search and rescue and transported prisoners. This was what they did. They eventually grew to a fleet of 25 planes and a blimp.
The promise of America.
Quick, he's getting away. Send the blimp. Oh no, it's hydrogen. Maybe the explosion will scare him.
Maybe they'll get them to confess if they think it's an act of God.
In 1927, stations in Altadena and San Dimas opened. 1928, they opened a crime lab and a station in Fairfax. 1932, they had grown to 850 deputies. In 1933, they formed the Silver Mounted Posse, which was guys on horses, and also got their very first uniforms, finally.
Finally. The horses get blimps? Go ahead.
No, the horses did have uniforms. They had to wear pants because it was indecent. It made people horny. Mr. Ed, are you trying to seduce me? This was also one of the first sheriff's departments in the country to have uniforms.
Wow.
In 1933. They wore a green shirt and pants, a black belt with a shoulder cross strap, and a hat and a bow tie. That's what they had to wear.
Cute.
Look at these guys. Oh, what's that in your hand? Oh, no.
Oh, no.
They wore this until 1955 when they went full khaki.
Full khaki.
In 1934, they opened the Malibu station. 1935, they opened the Sheriff's School of Instruction. 1937, they started using radios and opened stations in Montrose and Lancaster. 1939, they started the Coast Patrol, where they deputized private boat owners to patrol the coast, and also started the Sheriff's Boy Band, which was a kids' orchestra that toured the country.
Oh, great. Out sync?
Out of sync. During World War II, when deputies were being melted down into bullets, they started the auxiliary deputy sheriffs, which were basically non-deputized volunteers that would keep an eye on things while the force was depleted, which I'm sure went great. Cut to the Battle of Los Angeles, where everyone spent the night shooting at a balloon.
Get the blimp to... Oh, no, the blimp crashed.
We shot the blimp. Bring in the boy band. Bye, bye, bye. That'll make the balloon go away.
Hydrogen.
I'm trying to think of another.
Don't make me think of another NSYNC song.
They also okay. Well, how about a Backstreet Boys song? The Backstreet Boys, which is where they would beat up criminals.
Yeah, but they were allowed by their sheriff to go beat people up.
They also started the emergency reserves, who could be called up to help out in a natural disaster.
Yeah.
They also initially ran lifeguard services on the beach until Parks and Rec took it over, and then the fire department took that over. In 1959, the Lakewood station is open. 1963, they opened and ran the Men's Central Jail. 1964, the City of Industry Station opened. 1966, they started helicopter patrol called Sky Knight.
Sky Knight.
With the Dark Knight.
Yeah, like a K. Okay.
Which is a few of their favorite. In 1967, the Board of Supervisors felt that having both a sheriff's and a police department was redundant for Los Angeles. So they explored the idea of merging the sheriff's and police department, and everyone was on board with it. But then both the sheriff and chief of police both wanted to be the one in charge.
My God.
So it never happened. Because these two macho men... Can't I be alpha and you be alpha beta? It would have just been one thing to contend with.
Yeah, that it makes more sense that way. Trying to explain to
so much more
people
sense.
That they're like, oh yeah, well you committed that crime in Pomona, so LAPD has no right to get you. Yay! It's the sheriff's department. Oh
no. In 1972, women were finally given regular full patrol duties. In 1974 came the Carson and Montrose stations. 1975, Lomita. In 1979, they started the Canine program for searching and bomb detection. In 1983, they opened the Marina Del Rey station. 1985, the Avalon station. 1987, the Walnut station, where the nuts were. 1991, Lost Hills. 1992, Palmdale. 1993, Universal City. 1994, the Marshal's Department was merged with the Sheriff's Department.
Oh, cool.
The Parchment. 1996, the Lancaster station opened. And in 1997, the delightful Twin Towers Correctional Facility was open.
It's so whimsical.
It's not just a good name with a lot of good connotations, but a good reputation. They were run by the Sheriff's Department, which means that the LA County Sheriff's Department runs the largest jail system in the United States.
That sounds about right.
They also, when they feed that many criminals into it, they got to run them. They are also the largest Sheriff's Department in the United States, currently with just under 10,000 deputies, all serving under their motto, a tradition of service.
Okay. The bigger cities don't have sheriff's departments, right? It's not like New York and Chicago have a sheriff's department and a police force.
Whenever I think of the sheriff, I think of like driving through Mississippi and oh God, I'm in the middle of a swamp, and I'm getting pulled over by the sheriff, and he's chewing tobacco.
He's wearing
straw and tobacco somehow.
He's wearing Wayfarers. He's
He's Jackie Gleason. The bandit just got away, and he's frustrated, so he's coming after me. I don't think that happened in New York City.
No, I don't think
New York City.
I'm the sheriff of New York City.
I'm the sheriff of the Bronx. The sheriff of the Bronx is Christopher Walken. which is the King of New York.
I get it.
Their jurisdiction, the LA Sheriff's Department, covers about 2,500 square miles of LA's 4,000 square miles. As we covered in our hit viral TikTok video, they cover all the unincorporated parts of LA County and whichever individual cities can't afford their own police department, so they contract the Sheriff's Department. So that's how it works. There's over 40 of LA's 88 cities that do this. From these contract cities alone, the Sheriff's Department makes over $300 million a year, with their total budget being $4 billion, which is even higher than the LAPD gets paid. The sheriff has seniority over the chief of police, law enforcement-wise, in the hierarchy of the city. The police chief wears 4 stars on his uniform, while the sheriff wears 5 stars. To illustrate how highly the city of LA, the county of LA, values its sheriff. The last person to wear 5 stars for the U.S. federal government was World War II hero Omar Bradley, who died in 1981. So there hasn't been a 5-star uniform for the United States in over 40 years. But every single day, the sheriff of Los Angeles County walks around with 5 stars.
He's a Michelin rated
and
law
boy,
enforcement.
Does he look like the Michelin guy. I'm just going to give you a list of all the sheriffs LA has ever had.
Okay.
So there's George T. Burrell, James R. Barton, David W. Alexander, Charles E. Hale, James R. Barton again, Elijah Bettis, William C. Getman, James Thompson, Tomas A. Sanchez, James F. Burns, William R. Rowland, David W. Alexander, Henry M. Mitchell, William R. Rowland again, Alvin T. Courier, George E. Gard, James C. Hayes, Martin G. Aguirre. That's a common name. How do I know how to pronounce it? Aguirre.
I always said Aguirre, yeah. It might be. I always had Aguirre. We talked about him in one episode. I'm like, that can't be right.
Yeah, Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
Edward D. Gibson, John C. Klein, John Burr, William A. Hamill, Will A. White, William A. Hamill again, John C. Klein again, William I. Traeger, Eugene W. Biscaluz, Peter J. Pitchess, Sherman Block, Lee Baca, John Scott, Jim McDonnell, Alex Villanueva, and now Robert Luna. 34 sheriffs in LA history, many of these serving short terms.
Yeah.
And between 1915 to today, there have only been 10 sheriffs. But now, Greg, let's hear about one of the worst ones in a little bit more detail.
Okay. So you asked me to cover the worst sheriff, and I
didn't ask you to do it. You wanted to do it.
I wanted to.
I bleed blue. I bleed khaki.
I bleed khaki. I'm a khaki soldier, just like the rest of them.
I got my khaki flag out.
I'm like, I have these 2 that I want to do, but I can only have time to do one of them. And you're like, just pick the worst one. I don't know.
It's hard to quantify worse when like a guy was leading lynch mobs or
exactly.
things like
That's
that.
what I mean. Yeah. I don't like, certainly comparatively, Alex Villanueva is not the worst.
This is some recent bad history.
Yeah. Of the, he was the 33rd sheriff of Los Angeles County, serving a single term. Third.
Wait, 30.
Yeah, there's 34. Robert Luna's 34.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let me check my notes from 4 seconds ago.
4 seconds ago. I can't remember. He served a single term from 2018 to 2022, so we all probably pretty much remember him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's the worst. I don't think he is. He has some competition, obviously, and there are many allegations haven't been proven beyond speculation. But Villanueva, to me, signals a bigger issue, which is what I like to call Trump light.
Yes. Yeah.
He can be incredibly personable, sure, but before serving his term, he looked great on paper. But once he took office, his paranoia and ego took the wheel, and we got someone who was eerily similar to the president at the time.
Right. And well, I mean, we all loved voting for Trump that first time and the second time, and we will love it the third time.
The third time will be it, and then we'll never have to pick a president again. Right. He'll just be
sick
in
of
charge.
Voting.
I'm sick of voting. Yeah. To go down to Dodger Stadium every time.
We were talking a little bit about this of like when he first ran for election, he was marketed as a progressive candidate.
He was a Democratic ticket. Yeah, he was a progressive reformer, and
it's so weird.
It is
that
very
you could lie that a politician would
lie about something. We'll get into like kind of how he pulled that off. Alex Villanueva was born in Chicago to a Polish-American mother and a Puerto Rican father before moving to Rochester, New York, and then once again moving around the age of 9 to Puerto Rico, where his dad was born and raised. He stayed there through his formative years, learning to speak Spanish, which was going to be very important later in life. As he says himself in an interview with The Gray Line, the story behind the Blue Line podcast, he decided to, quote, join the Air Force when Ronald Reagan decided that the Pell Grant was too generous. So Uncle Stan, here I came. Which is like I say, like there are moments where he's kind of personable and he's like, kind of like, is that a slam against Ronald Reagan? He arrived at...
he wasn't conservative enough.
Old hippie Ronald Reagan. So he arrived at Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino in the early 80s. And by 1985, Villanueva joined the LA Sheriff's Department, where he took on many roles, including first as a jail guard, then moving on to patrol deputy, field supervisor, training officer, drill instructor, watch sergeant, and watch commander. When he was training to be a deputy in the mid-80s, a serial killer was running rampant all over the city. And by the time he became deputy, he made it sound like it was on his first day. Working,
he caught the serial.
Yeah. It sounded like it was very early in his career. He was working in the inmate reception center when they brought him in, Richard Ramirez, all beat up from the locals that had trapped him.
No, he did it.
Yeah.
Villanueva did it.
Yeah. While on duty through the years, he was the adjunct professor in criminal justice at California State University, Long Beach, and planning commissioner for the La Habra Heights Planning Commission. He was also in school while...
He was the titular planning commissioner.
He was also in school while on duty, earning first before his time with the Sheriff's Department. He got an associate's degree in liberal arts, a bachelor's of science and liberal studies, and later, as part of the department, he earned his master's degree from CSUN and eventually his doctorate from the University of La Verne, both in public administration. He wrote a dissertation on the impact of promotional practices on diversity in large law enforcement agencies. Alex meets his future wife, also in the department, Vivian, in 1933. The two start a family together. All this to say, the guy is not a slouch nor a goon. He served in the military. He's an academic. He lived in another country. So the very general assumption of him being like a narrow-minded white nationalist is lessened, or at least foggy at this point.
It hasn't emerged
yet. Hasn't emerged yet. Other deputies said he wasn't someone who liked to hang around with the boys after a shift. He wasn't a hard partier. They said that he was a good street cop who would follow up on calls and often try to talk suspects into custody. He was someone who would remain calm on a foot pursuit, who communicated well with other deputies. He kept his cool. One of his first big moves in a department...
This isn't the narrative I know, Greg.
Yeah, it's strange. When I was reading about his early years, I was like, what happened? One of the first big moves in the department was when he was still a deputy, and he made a big push to have smoking banned in all county jails. Move that was incredibly conscious towards the health of others, but would make him incredibly unpopular amongst the coolest crowd on the planet, smokers, both of the law enforcement side and the law-breaking side.
I was going to say, the coolest people you could think of, prisoners who smoke, prisoners who use cigarettes as currency.
But how will we know if they're cool or not? Based on how much cigarettes they have. Smokers on both sides would hate him. It was a fight to get smoking banned, and when he proposed it, a captain threw him out of his office. But in 1991, it finally passed, and thanks to a young deputy, smoking was banned in all county jails to prevent illnesses thanks to secondhand smoke. In 1999...
What about outside?
Yeah, what about outside?
Can't I still shiv people in the yard with a cigarette I turn into a knife?
Come on, let me...
The way I get people in jail is by secondhand smoke poisoning.
Secondhand shivving. In 1999, he became frustrated with the limitations of the Deputies Union, the Association of LA County Deputy Sheriffs. So he led the charge and founded an alternative union, the Los Angeles Sheriffs Professional Association. But its alt union is not all powerful the way that LACDS was. So deputies found themselves having to be part of two unions now. Not very effective.
So at this point, there's two law enforcement agencies with at least three unions.
Yeah, 3 unions. And if you were smart, you'd only be part of 2. Not very effective, but he was showing everyone that he was someone who would step up and take charge if he felt like something wasn't right. It could be seen that way, or it can be seen that he doesn't like to be told what to do. He doesn't like the smell of cigarettes all day, so he bans smoking for everyone. He doesn't like the way the union does business, so he starts his own union. Like it could be viewed in 2 different ways. He first ran for...
I don't like Twitter. I have my own Twitter.
I have my own Twitter. Exactly. After getting banned from Twitter. I don't like Twitter anymore.
This app's going downhill since like 3 today.
For unspecified reasons. He first ran for sheriff in 1993, the year after the civil unrest of the Rodney King verdict.
Wow. He did that far back?
Yeah. That's when he first ran for sheriff. And when he saw how poorly Sheriff Sherman Block had handled the chaos, he ended up withdrawing from the race, but kept chasing the aspirations of greatness and clashing with people who outranked him. Villanueva was a hard worker, but outspoken, and that kept him from rising the ranks and getting a high-profile position. He claims it was because he actively spoke out against Lee Baca, who in 2020 started his 3-year sentence in prison for obstructing FBI investigation, and Under Sheriff Paul Tanaka, who served 60 months in federal prison in 2016 for obstruction of justice in the same incident.
Still doesn't qualify as the worst sheriff, though. He's in jail.
He's still not the worst. Just a cheesemate corner. 2011. Oh, this is what the incident was, just so you know, with Lee Baca. Deputies at Men's County Jail recovered a mobile phone from an inmate and found that it was linked to the FBI. The inmate was an informant working with a deputy to uncover and expose corruption and civil rights violation in Mint County Jail. So Paul Tanaka, the undersheriff, and his underlings hid the informant from the FBI and U.S. Marshals who were looking to bring him in to testify. The deputies began altering records to make it look like they released the informant from jail and told the informant that the FBI had completely abandoned him. So Tanaka and his deputies then tried to use the LA Superior Court judge to get the FBI to release the information about what they had on the sheriff's department, which no judge could do. No city judge can be like, hey, FBI, give us the thing. So then they tried to intimidate another FBI agent at her home, and that's when the hammer came down on all of them.
That is ridiculous.
So Tanaka and Lee Baca had a history and capability.
Is that why they got along?
Yeah, their names rhymed. They could fit into a Weird Al song. That's why they were friends.
Weird Al's funny protest song.
The two of them had a history and capability of being corrupt and shady, and Villanueva believes him speaking out against them kept him from moving up at the sheriff's department. He claimed all promotions in the department were based on loyalty and not professional accomplishment. In 2005, he sued the department over racial discrimination, saying him and other Latinos were denied promotions, mostly for speaking out against what he called the racial discriminatory policies and practices. Remember, his dissertation was on this subject, so he's well knowledgeable.
Yeah, that. I mean, you're comparing him to Donald Trump in a lot of ways. This guy sounds, I don't know. When I don't want to compare bad politicians who do bad things but are good at being politicians, I think he's more like Ron DeSantis.
Right.
Who
maybe
knows how to play the game and has
he's an actual politician.
Yeah, I was going to say has intelligence, but I don't know if he really does. This Villanueva sounds like he's intelligent.
Yeah. No, I'm not taking that away from him. He's just his ego's so big.
Right. Well, he's a sheriff.
He's like that. Yeah. And it switches on a dime, too.
Well, yeah, when you join an organization that's all about, who can wear the 5 stars.
Yeah, really,
You are only going to attract people with egos.
I was going to be at LAPD, but that's only 4 stars. Right. And I want 5 stars. I want to tell the police chief what to do.
I want to arrest the police chief one day. That's the FBI's job.
Oh, no, Interpol's here.
Yeah, the Interpol arrests the head of the FBI.
Into 2010s, after being passed up on promotions and making enemies with the upper crust of the department for some time, he began looking into government roles. In 2015, he ran unsuccessfully for a seat on the La Habra Heights City Council. After Lee Baca was out as sheriff, John Scott finished his term, and the position of LA County Sheriff was put on Jim McDonald.
Right.
Jim McDonald's not criminally insane, but he had one thing going against him. During Trump's reign as president, Jim McDonald took a hard stance against immigration, often siding with ICE. He was against California being a sanctuary state, and he would allow immigration to deport prisoners who are not citizens.
I remember all that happening.
He was so pro-ICE. And this is Los Angeles, a city where many people are connected to non-U.S. citizens living in the country. So with Trump's anti-immigrant rhetoric stirring everyone up, it put citizens in a mindset to be extra vigilant and super defensive about immigration on either side of the issue.
I remember at work, even, for those who don't know, I work for the library, but I won't tell you which one because it's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I'll just throw, I work at the San Pedro one, so go there. I remember when that was happening, the library even told all of us that if immigration comes into the library, you do not help them.
Yeah.
You cannot tell, they even tell this for the police. If the police come in saying, what's this person's, they just scan their library card. You don't tell them anything. Yeah. You cannot tell them anything.
I dig the library so much. In theory, on paper.
In theory, on
yes.
paper. Working there.
Nah, less so. but in theory, it's such a democratic.
Right. It's socialist. They are good about that sort of thing, and I won't take that away from them. Yeah. I'll take a lot of other stuff.
Bed bugs. I'll give them bed bugs.
Yeah. Oh, I love their bed bugs. The bed bugs at the library are so well read.
You will meet the craziest homeless people if you hang out at the library long enough.
The bed bugs will only hang out in their finest literature, the spine of your finest books.
Whatever book you need, you can find the biggest bed bugs in them.
Because there was a threat. It was scary in the city for a while because a lot of people in the library go there to become citizens, and ICE knows that. So I never saw this happen. I don't even know if it did happen in the library.
But the threat of it happening and having to be warned.
The possibility that it could. Yeah. We had to be told, do not help them.
Yeah. It's always constantly scary for undocumented people. But I remember that time it was stirred up so much into a frenzy that everyone was sort of talking about it.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember even because we know people who don't have, aren't citizens. And we were thinking do we have to hide them in our attic? Is ICE going to be raiding our apartment?
Kicking down doors. So when Villanueva decides to run, it gets everyone's attention. Even his last name was enough to perk up the ears of voters who were tired of old white dudes calling the shots. Villanueva,
he's only a half of an old white dude.
Villanueva lived a large portion of his life in Puerto Rico. If he was elected as LA County Sheriff, he would be the first Spanish-speaking sheriff since Martin Aguirre in 1890.
The last Spanish-speaking sheriff since two non-Spanish-speaking people could even pronounce.
For someone who would cry woke at every disagreement later, he was running on a lot of identity politics.
Yeah.
He was running on like, look at my last name. I speak Spanish. Vote for me. Like he was running on that. Villanueva running as LA County Sheriff was a hard sell though, because he had no previous senior law enforcement experience. I think he was a lieutenant, the highest role he got. He was.
I don't even know. Is that good? Is that lower than the general sheriff?
All other county sheriffs since 1921, when William Traeger took the spot, replacing John Klein. Same thing. William Traeger also the last time that someone ran with no senior law enforcement experience. Villanueva was also running on a Democratic ticket with which no candidate for sheriff of LA had done for 138 years. McDonald now had to campaign for his seat. He wasn't expecting that.
Right.
Yeah.
And like we talked about. I could go for McDonald's right now, as we were talking about. But like we were talking about with him running as a Democrat, like I voted for him. Yeah. I'm embarrassed to say I voted for him the first time because he was marketed and he said like, I'm going to be progressive.
Yeah.
I'm going to change things. I'm a Democrat, and boy, oh boy,
did we not look into that? I mean, really, like talking about his no experience, there really just wasn't a lot of information about him. So him presenting himself as like, this is my last name. I speak Spanish. I've worked for the department for this long. I was in the military. I'm an academic. Like, if that's all we really knew about him beyond no reputation was brought up. So we were like, okay, well, let's see what this is like, and we found out.
Let's try something new. New is as bad as old.
What's old like? Oh boy, so good. So new and old are bad. The fact that there was now running for the position shocked everyone, but it seemed like a David and Goliath story. Like McDonald was experienced.
The McDonald or McDonald?
McDonald.
You keep saying McDonald, and it's making me hungrier every single time you say it.
You don't even like McDonald's.
I like McNuggets.
Jim McNuggets was experienced.
He was the chief of police at the time. McDonald versus McNuggets.
Famous court case that we all remember. McDonald was experienced, had replaced a corrupt sheriff, Lee Baca, and had raised 8 times the amount of campaign money as Villanueva, and he had endorsements and connections. Villanueva had a lot going against him. California Republicans didn't trust him, and others didn't know him. His tactics for running were really grassroots, and he targeted a lot of communities of color, in particular honing in on Latino voters. Financially, he was backed by the Association of Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs, which was the deputy union he actively separated from early in his career.
I should have known. Like when I see that there is a strong union with a bad reputation, I'm not going to name names, but there's, I guess, 3 in Los Angeles. If I see that a candidate is backed by that, I don't vote for them. So I should have known.
Yeah, you should.
I should have known.
You should have known. We should have.
And he won by 1 vote, right?
He was a single vote. And it's weird in this region, too.
I know.
Isn't that weird? They donated 1.
Wait a minute. Do I vote on the sheriff? I don't live in LA County.
Oh, probably not.
Wait, but no, I did. Because in this most recent one, I voted for the other guy.
Right. Yeah. Okay. They did. Anyways, did
I commit election fraud? Did I admit
Is there something wrong with voting 3 times? Is that bad?
I also registered under the name Robert E. Lee. It was just a name I found in a graveyard. So I registered under that name too. And I voted, for that.
I just like the sound of the middle initial. I voted under Bobby Lee. Is that bad? So the other union that he tried to separate from, they donated $1.3 million to his campaign. This is verbatim from the LA Almanac website. Unfortunately, Villanueva's success was almost immediately colored by an allegation of quote-unquote straw donor campaign contributions, an illegal effort to circumvent limits on personal political contributions orchestrated by a business supporter of Villanueva. To be fair, the allegation was against the supporter, not on the Villanueva side. However, Villanueva declined to return the questionable donations, casting a troubling shadow on his political intuition even before he assumed office. So this is like the first, wait, what?
Right.
So I found this out. The businessman in question was Manuel Gomez, the manager of multiple locations of the local burger chain Tams. What? The one in the photo used was Tams 21, which, yes, they are all numbered, and people in town can delineate their favorites Tams based on the number they
Wasn't
frequent.
there just something with they filmed a Kendrick Lamar or something in front of Tams?
Oh, maybe. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
There was no evidence.
Is he a straw donor? Kendrick Lamar?
Kendrick Lamar, did he?
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
Is this beef just raising money for Villanueva? This is a Drake man argument.
Yeah, let's see what Drake says about this.
By the way, that is the most hip and current reference I think I have ever made in my life. And I don't even know what I was saying.
Did someone tie you down and make you hear this information?
I went to a shoe store on Fairfax and they like a Clockwork Orange, they strapped me in and held my ears open and
I'm a new man now.
Now whenever I hear the beat drop, I lose all sexual appetite.
Not a single drip. Of sexual appetite. Not in me. So there was no evidence that Villanueva was laundering the money, and the business manager was fined $50,000. Villanueva and his treasurer had to admit to reporting omissions and were fined for not returning a portion of the money. Is Villanueva to blame for this? No. I don't get the feeling that he knew what was going on, but still, already stained. He was promising a lot as a reformer. He said he was going to clean up the department, which was plagued with as much corruption as LAPD. He was going to get ICE out of the county jail and
He said that?
He said that. And he said he was going to look out for undocumented immigrants. He said these things. He was a Democrat running in mostly blue.
I guess that's why I voted for him.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, let's see what he does. He was running on all this in 2018, like in the height of Trump era, when Democrats were scrambling to undo all the far right-wing policies that the Trump administration was enacting. And because he seemed progressive and because he was using the right words and had that last name, there was a lean in his direction.
Right. And that lean was to the left.
So in 2018, it stunned many people to find out that Alex Villanueva had beat out Jim McDonald to become sheriff of LA County, the first candidate in LA County to beat the incumbent sheriff since 1914. It was seen as historic. Villanueva, who had no experience with this position of magnitude, was now faced with commanding 20,000 employees of the large sheriff's department of the U.S. and a jail system as well.
Right. And now he had to put a new star on his collar.
Yeah. Where he could find the room. And almost immediately.
That's why his neck got so thick.
He does have a Barney Rubble neck. And almost immediately, things began to sour. Mm-hmm. Villanueva swept through the department and removed over a dozen leaders and replaced them with people he brought in, cleaning the old staff out who was connected to Baca and Tanaka, and therefore corrupt, he said, although he did not show the math on how all these people were connected and how they were corrupt.
They're just corrupt.
Yeah, they're just corrupt. He replaced the undersheriff, all 4 of the assistant sheriffs, 11 chiefs, the communication director, and a community outreach director, as well as 2 constitutional policy advisors. This is not wholly uncommon, and the accusation that this was an act of revenge is typical, but then he rehired his friend and a personal driver through his campaign. I think his name is Corinne Carl Mandonian. Rehired? Well, what happened? Well, Mandonian was fired over allegations of domestic violence, stalking, spying, and threatening an ex-girlfriend and lying to investigators, basically being unfit for the position of deputy.
What? But that sounds like their MO.
Yeah, right? That sounds like...
Isn't that like the test, the written test?
The written test, yeah.
How
will you know if you're cool or not?
How much room on your skin do you have for tattoos?
The scariest tattoos you've ever seen. This was the first person that he rehired back.
Okay. I mean, that goes back to the original days of like, I'm the new guy. All of these old people are gone because I want my people.
I want my people in here. It's also said that days before his win, Villanueva tried to persuade a top official to rehire Mandonian so it would look like it was done under McDonald's watch and not Villanueva's. Villanueva would argue that his friend Mandonian was innocent, that his firing was retaliation. This was his Trump-like pattern. Anything that happened that made Villanueva look like the bad guy, he would claim it was retaliation or part of a conspiracy against him. Total persecution complex. Everything is political payback for something. He was not someone who was going to try to take responsibility for his action. He was going to allow favoritism and reward loyalty, the very thing he accused and attacked others over.
But why was he just lying?
I think he was just lying and holding back until he had the power to do whatever he wanted. And now, okay, well, I now have the power to rehire him. Who's going to tell me no? I'm the sheriff of LA County.
Omar Bradley? He's dead.
He's dead now. He soon rolled back discipline guidelines for the sheriff's department to what they were in 2012 when they were less strict for deputies. These guidelines were in place before rampant abuse claims in jailhouse beatings and the guidelines that punished and deterred lying. He rolled all that back.
This is a lot for the sheriff's department to also run the jails. That's like too much. That's almost like your judge, jury, and executioner. If you're the ones, you can't, they shouldn't be controlling that many things.
During the COVID pandemic, he declined to enforce mask orders, refused employee vaccine mandates, fought against public health officials, fought against scientific studies. I see this as an abuse of power and not looking out for the public's interest. That's my personal take on that.
To be fair, the LAPD did too.
Yeah.
And also, to be fair, kind of so did the fire department.
Oh, God.
You mentioned that you had forgot to put in your notes the Venice thing.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Let me finish the COVID thing and then we'll get into that. Even if you disagree.
Finally finish this COVID thing already.
I'm tired of talking about it. Even if you disagree and think that science is magic or whatever, like consider like how much it is to ask someone to wear a mask. And is that like too much? To these people, yeah, it's too much to ask to wear a mask just for public consideration.
That was just like
that was bare minimum.
Yeah, that was just so. With everything that was going on at the time of like they're getting too much money, like sheriffs they're getting too much money, and literally to ask the bare minimum of like, well, can you at least put on a mask when you come and like do this stuff to people? No, that's my personal freedom. Well, what if you're wrong? Have you considered that if you're wrong, you can kill someone? Doesn't matter to you, does it? Great. I'm never wrong, and I always kill someone.
5 stars.
5 stars for 5 deaths.
We could talk about right now is a good time
the Venice
to talk about.
Thing.
Yeah.
If you don't remember, at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people started living on the boardwalk of Venice, and the city, what can they do?
Yeah.
But then Villanueva, because Venice is Los Angeles City.
Yep.
That is a part of the city of Los Angeles. But Villanueva
and like 50 deputies.
His Los Angeles Rangers came in and just, what did they do? They started
they
pushed them
down
all into Santa Monica.
Yeah.
Which, I guess Santa Monica has their own police department,
sure.
I think. So yeah, they pushed them out of Venice into Santa Monica. Venice is not his jurisdiction. Nope. And Santa Monica is not his jurisdiction.
Neither one of them are.
And that was just crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because he wanted to make a point of like, this is what you could be doing.
Yeah, sure. But it's not that you broke the law to do that. That was not your jurisdiction.
You broke it twice, I think. I think you broke 2 laws. 3 even.
Yeah.
If you're considering the human rights of these people.
Yeah.
Which I know you're not.
Which I know they don't. Yeah. And very few people seem to not care at all.
But it was just crazy that like even the LAPD let him just like go. Even like, we know that you guys are filled with pride and territorialness. Like, you're just going to let him onto your turf.
This is like
and do this
in Big Trouble in Little China when they're in the truck and there's 2 armies fighting each other and they're just trying to get out. Like, just fight each other. Like, you two, someone should be stopping them. Like, even the enemy should stop the enemy. It was crazy. It was crazy to do that.
It was really weird.
Yeah.
It was
very cowboy.
It was, it did. I mean, didn't he walk around with a cowboy hat, or is that just my imagination?
I also saw it too. So maybe he did, but also like
he wore a duster, right? And like spurs. Yeah, it was crazy. It was one of the many crazy things that were happening at the time. So it was kind of a blur. Everyone was wearing a cowboy hat in my memory.
Everybody had a dust. Everybody who didn't wear a mask had a dust jacket. In 2020, when Measure R passed in Los Angeles, authorizing a sheriff civilian oversight commission to reduce jail population, he refused to help even when subpoenaed. He refused to recognize any subpoenas given out to his department. His argument was, quote, since the Board of Supervisors has already spent over $1 million suing itself and their own sheriff, Measure R will open the floodgates for many more ill-advised lawsuits designed to seek documents that are not legally available for public release. This is simply weaponizing oversight as a way to politically bash the LASD. He then says that the collaboration is needed, but to me, isn't this an attempt at collaboration? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, this was this was the time when everyone was also trying to get Gascon recalled just because they didn't like him. Like, as if that was a reason that you can recall somebody.
Yeah, I don't like him.
I don't know. It's like Gascon and Joe Biden, of all these people, of like, we got to get rid of them. These are 2 of the most mildest, like middle of the road people. Yeah. And they're trying so hard to do something that isn't legally allowed to do.
Yeah, but they love the other guy. He called himself an honest man.
Crazy time
to be alive. He called himself an honest man in a den of thieves. Of course he did. For things like this, the deputies, of course, loved him. This is the kind of bold boss that they were looking for. But when we talk about the deputies, we should probably bring up something that I really would like to get into in depth one day. The mythic, possibly, some people say they're real. There's a lot of evidence that they are real. The Los Angeles Sheriff Department gangs.
Yeah, you love these guys.
It's terrifying to me. You'd love to spend. There's a podcast called A Tradition of Violence that covers them, the gangs, and Villanueva in detail. So check that out if you're curious about that. But Villanueva calls deputies having matching tattoos camaraderie and bonding. The people terrified of LASD call them gang insignias. These gangs include the Banditos, the Buffalo Soldiers, Cavemen, Cowboys, Executioners, Grim Reapers, Jump Out Boys, the Little Red Devils, Pirates, Posse, Rattlesnakes, Regulators, Spartans, Tasmanian Devils, 3,000 Boys, 2,000 Boys, the Vikings, and the Wayside Whites.
What about the Sheriff's Boy Band? Are they still a gang?
Are they a gang? Do they have matching tattoos? Each from their own station and area.
Tell me why. That's another song.
Tell me why. each of their each from their own station and area with matching tattoos and signals. These are like a subgroups that abuse not only citizens but other deputies who aren't in the cliques. The killing of Andres Guardado in 2020 sparked a resurgence of the question of whether there are LASD gangs or not, and the terrifying rumor that your initiation into the gang as a deputy is killing someone of your own race to get in. They believe that Andres Guardado was rumored to have been killed so a deputy could get into the Compton executioners. It is said by witness that when Guardado was shot 6 times, he was on his knees with his hands behind his head. And like all sheriffs before him, he downplayed the existence of LASD gangs until more recently, but he certainly did very little to curtail or recognize them when questioned.
Right. I remember him saying, because wasn't there a while where they were like, lift up your shirt? Like they wanted to see if he had tattoos, and he like refused to say whether or not he refused to show us his chest.
Yeah. Show me your, take your clothes off. Other things, he's mishandled the scandal involving the deputy circulating photos of the helicopter crash that killed Kobe Bryant and several others, resulting in a $31 million lawsuit. This is a man who would always take law enforcement's side over the public, the exact thing we don't need anymore.
Yeah, that's really the problem.
The problem. Yeah, that's the to me, the main problem is that this is a clique. He has made veiled threats to reporters who question him. He has often announced that he was going to investigate people investigating him, which is seen as an act of intimidation. Because all of this, the LA County Democratic Party and other Democratic parties that supported him publicly turned their back on him and called for him to resign, as did the Civilian Oversight Committee. Los Angeles Magazine referred to him as the Donald Trump of LA law enforcement, and it felt like that.
Yeah.
He felt like a blowhard, paranoid megalomaniac that Democrats were actively trying to avoid.
What went, like so many people went so crazy in 2020, and this, like, what happened?
Well, I mean, we had, it was...
As Fred Willard once said.
We had 4 years of Trump, so everybody was fighting each other. Then the pandemic hit, which was supposed to be a unifying global thing. We continued to fight even more, and then George Floyd was killed, and it just like pitched us further and further into like a dividing... Like the line in the sand just got deeper and deeper until it became like an unfixable crack. And this was like after 10 years of turmoil, social turmoil that was leading up to it. That's what happened.
I get it now.
And when I say 10 years of social turmoil, I'm ignoring like 300 years of previous things that were led up to that. Where was I? It's what happens when you vote based on identity politics, sure. But also, like I said, there wasn't a lot we knew about him. So it's sort of like, well, let's see what this is like. In 2021, the California Attorney General's office formally announced that they were going to launch a civil rights investigation into allegations of excessive force, retaliation, and other misconduct, as well as a number of incidents with LASD management and personnel. Now, truly, everyone was coming after him. This is not more paranoia of like, you're mad at me? It must be because there's a conspiracy. No, now we are all after you. We're coming for you. The following year, 2022, a leaked video showcasing abuse that deputies were committing against an inmate in a courthouse from the previous year, it leaked. Video shows deputies trying to corral an inmate. The inmate takes a swing at a deputy, so 2 inmates descend to subdue him to the ground. Cool, agreed, do that. That's what you have to do in that situation.
Greg loves police brutality. Okay, it's on record.
Then more deputies come. That's expected. Sure, this was kind of a bigger guy. Then a deputy kneels on his head for 3 minutes to keep the inmate down who was already handcuffed. This after the arrest of George Floyd, when we're extra sensitive about legaling on people.
Yeah.
When the training should have been incredibly like, hey, let's not do that.
Yeah, and I think there was didn't they say after that, like, we don't do that?
We don't kneel on heads anymore.
And then they did it. We don't kneel on heads anymore.
We don't kneel on heads anymore.
It's 2022. We don't kneel on heads anymore.
Nothing above the shoulders. The inmate did not die. And I understand that situations like this don't allow for a lot of forethought. You have to rely on instinct. Sometimes you have to be a little like, if you have to retaliate and matching energies, it's still a violation. And no, this is against guidelines, and no one was this case was not opened up until a year later. And it's rumored that Villanueva was aware of the video, but did not act until the video was leaked. At a press conference, he focused more on the leaking of the video as a crime and not the deputy's behavior.
I remember that.
Yeah.
He was saying, I'm going to find who's responsible for leaking this video.
He then used large graphic images to show the crowd who the enemies he thought who were behind the leaking of the video, which included
journalists, right?
He said he blamed Eli Vera, who's running against him, to be sheriff, Max Huntsman, the sheriff's inspector general, and Eileen Techmedian, the LA Times reporter who broke the story. There was a huge...
And didn't he like list their addresses or something?
Yeah, he did something like that. I for sure like showed images and said like this is where they worked and stuff. I don't know about the address thing, but that sounds like it wouldn't be far off.
It wouldn't be also hard to find for a disgruntled sheriff to find.
There was a huge backlash.
Deputy, sorry.
Sorry. There was a huge backlash against this move, and attacking a journalist for doing her job and putting her on blast for doing her job, exposing the truth, just looking at her like she's a co-conspirator. This is tyrant behavior. Right. This is Trump light. So in November of 2022, he made history again. He died.
Diet, I said.
Oh, diet, yeah.
Trump zero,
yeah. In 2022, he
less calories.
So we all are kind of eyeballing it. He made history again when he lost his bid for re-election, serving one tumultuous term and losing to a former Long Beach police chief, Robert Luna. Yeah. That same year, Measure A passed, amending the county charter to grant the Board of Supervisors authority to remove the elected sheriff from office for cause, including a violation of law relating to a sheriff's deputies, his duties, flagrant or repeated neglect of duties, misappropriation of funds, willful falsification of documents, or obstructing investigation by 4/5 of a vote by the Board of Supervisors after a written notice and an opportunity to be heard.
When the charter of the city is rewritten after your term,
behavior,
like that's how you know, like, you screwed up.
You screwed up. You did pretty bad. Now nobody after you can be as bad as you. They have to work harder to be as bad as you were.
They have to control the city council, the Board of Supervisors.
He's now a right-wing media darling and is suing LA. Yeah. And he's now suing LA County for alleging being on a do not rehire list by Max Huntman, the inspector general. He lost his bid to be the LA County supervisor in March.
Oh, gangs don't exist in the sheriff department, but a do not hire list does exist.
Does exist, yeah. He lost his bid to be the LA County supervisor in March. He has denied the validity of those election results. Trump light. He lost the LA County supervisors to Janice Hahn, the daughter of Kenneth Hahn and brother to former Mayor James Hahn.
Well, Janice has been... Janice, Jan.
OJ?
Yeah.
JH? Yeah.
OJ.
Yeah.
She's been a supervisor for a long time.
Yeah, she's been,
and exactly. Rightfully so. I mean, maybe there's something bad she's done.
I actually have not looked
From what I can tell, she seems pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, her dad was good.
Villanueva called Janice and James Hahn Nepo babies. Trump-alite. That was Alex Villanueva's story.
I want those to be his last words. Nepo babies.
Nepo babies.
He's yelling at Jesus for taking his life. Yeah. So here's my thing because like this wasn't a particularly pro sheriff's department episode. I understand that being a sheriff, being a police officer is not easy.
Nope.
And that
being law enforcement
is not easy. And doing that job messes you up. Mm-hmm. Like I work with the public again at the San Pedro Branch Library. You can come say hi. I work with the public and it messes me up. Like people are mean, people are crazy, people are like, even with me, people get aggressive sometimes and it messes you up and it makes you cynical.
Yeah. And I think a lot of regular non-law enforcement citizens have an idea of an ideal law enforcement agent in our heads.
Yeah.
And it never measures up to that. Right. And that's not fair for us, but also...
Yeah, it messes you up, but you can't be messed up like that if your job is to help people and not to overreact.
Not to overreact and to be fair.
And to be fair.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the solution is with that.
No, I don't know. It's a long historical problem. Go ahead.
It is. And that being said, in my personal experience, I have never been helped by a law enforcement officer. I have never, ever... They have never helped me.
Yeah.
Like when I've had actual problems that they should be dealing with, I have never been helped by them. That being said, there are people like Dr. Shiloh who work for the LAPD.
Absolutely.
And like homicide detective, people who deal with like rape and stuff like that. These are important jobs.
Yeah.
Day-to-day things, I don't know how useful it is. And I will say for certainly they get too much money. Yeah. Like as we learned today, between the LAPD and the Sheriff's Department, that's almost $8 billion going towards law enforcement.
Extraordinary.
That's outrageous. Yeah. When some of these things should be being handled by other departments that don't have enough money.
That are constantly struggling. Just give us $1 billion of that.
Give us $1 billion of
that. Give us $1 billion.
Give
the libraries $1 billion.
All I'm asking is for Villanueva to take off his top and for the city to give us $1 billion.
I just want two things. Yeah, when I worked at the Coliseum, the security there is LAPD, so I got to know LAPD officers, and it has given me an idea like not every single cop is the same, and not every single cop story is the same, and there are like really cool guys who are cops. They're really good cops, but there's also bad cops and there's bad dudes who are cops.
Yes.
And every cop is a different human being.
Yes.
So like, I feel very bad when I make general sweeps about LAPD or a sheriff's department. But I will say, like, I understand that like there's a camaraderie when you all have a dangerous job together. But like picking their side over the public side is such a dangerous thing to start doing.
That's the thing. I hate to be like, it's just a few bad apples.
Yeah.
But there seems to be something wrong overall when you
about
see
the role you take.
When you see the public as the enemy, when you are the ones trying to protect the public, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And you don't need tanks.
You don't need tanks.
So I hate to completely slam law enforcement, I think there's serious problems.
Yeah,
obviously, like that's not controversial. There are massive problems.
And sometimes all I want to hear is a cop to say, "Yeah, there's serious problems. We don't know how to fix it." But like, yeah, there's a lot of problems. Like sometimes I just need you to acknowledge. But like, it seems like cops are like, "No, there's nothing wrong. Our job's really hard." And it seems like they're constantly having to battle against people who are like, "Why aren't you more transparent? Why do you turn your body cams off?"
Right. My finger slipped. That's I mean, when you're structured like the military.
Yeah. Thanks, Parker.
That's a problem.
Yeah. I say thanks, Parker, as if the thing before Parker was great either. It wasn't.
Can't we go back to the days of Sheriff Burrow walking around with a infantry sword?
And a giant mustache? Not regulation mustache. It's something sociological about the role that must change you, and I get that. I'm saying, it messes you up.
Yeah, it messes you up. It really messes you. It messes you up, but it also attracts a certain type of person. A lot of times,
yeah. And I don't have a suggestion for how to fix it.
Maybe I have no idea. I know is nobody does. They will be fine with $1 billion less. Yeah, they will be fine.
They'll be fine. Yeah,
and the rest of the city will have a massive improvement just with that. That much I know for certain. Yeah, all the other problems I have no idea. Yeah. I'm stupid. But I know that much.
Criminally stupid. Terminally stupid.
And they are trying to arrest me for that.
They are circling my apartment right now, trying to figure out what the code is to get in the gate.
Trying to figure out how to turn a doorknob. Well, that's our little sum up of the policing situation in Los Angeles. So before we get into our listener question, we have a pre-listener question plug.
Oh, that's right.
I'm going to say once again, you can subscribe to our Patreon at Patreon got milk. Patreon.com/LA Meekly for as little as $1 a month.
Yeah, $1.
You will support us keeping the show going, and we will send you a sticker just for supporting us. But for $5 a month, you will get a handwritten postcard every single month from a different place in Los Angeles, written by us with handwriting that needs its own department in law enforcement to decipher what is being said.
Yeah, every postcard has to run through a handwriting expert to determine if a language is being written.
It needs to pass through the Turing machine or the Enigma machine, whichever one decides whether or not it's human.
A lot of times you'll look at a postcard and think, "Is this Richter scale readings? What is this?
Should I duck and cover?" Patreon.com/LA Meekly. You can support us, keep the show going. So now we have our listener question. So this has been kind of a heavier episode. Yeah. So this one is from our pal Emilio Ronga III.
Yes.
He asks, if LA had a Gritty-like mascot, who or what would it be? So for those who don't know, Gritty is the mascot of the Philadelphia Flyers. Yes. And he's kind of like a monster who like jiggles around and has googly eyes. So what would the Gritty be for Los Angeles? I want to hear yours.
I mean, like I thought about it for a little bit and I was thinking, I don't know if it's going to be a Gritty like a plushie, but I was thinking like one of the local celebrities, like...
Oh, so you're going with a known entity.
Well, just like an idea of a known entity, like roller skating Jesus, and it's like a guy with long hair and sunburns and like sunglasses.
It's Angeline, but doing a dog puppet from the dog puppet guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's got it. I think that'd be like a mascot like that, or like one of our many like insurance billboards.
Oh, that would be good.
Like that. I think of a mascot.
But what would they be doing? Because Gritty's crazy. Greg, watch out.
Yeah, Gritty is crazy.
Is unhinged.
Roller skating Jesus. And by the way, that also goes back to our Spanish Mexican days historically.
Roller skating?
The Jesus part, but now in 20, he's like sunburned and has long hair. He'd be roller skating around and pointing and stuff and doing the cross with his fingers. The billboard is just Adriana and she's pointing at you.
Oh, is her dog there?
Her dog is also there.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he's also...
2 for 1. Who, by the way, Adrian, it's Veronica.
Veronica has the dog. Yeah. You're right.
Which I'm wondering, is Veronica the dog or the woman?
I've never questioned that before.
This is why you elected Villanueva.
Yeah, that's what I had for an answer. What do you think?
So mine, I created a wholly unique creature. So mine, I couldn't think of what form the entity would take. But then again, what is Gritty even?
Yeah, really.
What is
he?
What entity
amalgamation
is he? What is
of different monsters?
Is he just Philadelphia incarnate? So to mask him not really having a form, I'd say his lower half is obscured by a bunch of cars and traffic. And the upper half is obscured by a cloud made of a blend of smog, wildfire smoke, and marijuana smoke. But you can see through the cloud bloodshot marijuana eyes. Mm-hmm. So you know he's corporeal. There's something, it's like Jupiter. Like we know something's in there. And Gritty has a lot of motion. So the thing is, he's gently trembling with occasional sharp jolts to simulate an earthquake. So that's how he's moving. It also isn't anything explicit, but you can tell just by looking at him that he can't afford to move out of his apartment. So that's what I think our Gritty should be. And I want someone to do a rendering of these. I want action figures on my desk by July 4th.
July 4th, yeah. By Independence Day. I want a figure that I can, like a Funko Pop of this.
Yeah, I want to be free from Gritty. I want our own Gritty.
That's a great mashup of problems with the city.
It's going to take a lot of wiring. This guy, whoever's in this, is going to need is like 4 air conditioners because he's going to be breathing in actual pollution.
Yeah, actual real smoke. Pollution. Yeah, he's going to have to have strong lungs.
So those are our Gritties.
Yeah, those are our Gritties. And thanks for asking, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, Emilio. So this is our law enforcement. This is the first time we really addressed law enforcement. We've talked about things that involve the law enforcement, but we've never done a history of law enforcement before, have we?
Yeah, we have.
Have we done this episode before?
We have done this episode before. This one's better, though. Yeah,
we're just going to rehash old episodes. Ellie Meekley Redux.
We covered Parker and Gates before.
Oh, right. But those are individuals. We didn't do like the forming of a law enforcement
Not really,
agency.
No.
We should start our own law enforcement agency. Why not a third?
Yeah.
And we'll be called, we can't use constables. That's already been used.
Yeah.
The Bobbies. The LA Bobbies.
The Bobbies, yeah.
And we ride around, it's like Bobby's World. So we ride around in tricycles and we are feared.
It's like Chips, but mean. Meaner, yeah.
So enjoy your July, everybody. Hide your animals for the next month.
Yeah.
Because
it's going to get crazy.
Get ready for the next heat wave. We'll see how I handle it.
Yeah, not well.
And it's been yet another episode of Ellie Meekley, deputizing Gritty since 2013.
That's stapling. He's stapling a wanted poster to him.
Yeah. But his staples are like wobbling everywhere and he keeps accidentally stapling himself. Oh, Gritty.
Gritty, cut it out.
Gritty, you're bleeding out.
No,
Gritty.
I didn't even know he'd been shot.
I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot Gritty. Have you heard that song before?
No, I'm glad I haven't.